now listening to Analytical Perspective, the Entertainment Edition. Today's episode will be on Grownish. A boy is a gun. Let's talk about it. So I'm back here with you once again, reviewing Grownish, Season 4, Episode 5, A Boy is a Gun. It's a very interesting episode, okay? So I'm just going to dive straight into it. This week's episode starts basically with Doug. Doug is coming out of the dorms. He is getting ready to take that run. And as he starts to take the run, even a little bit before, we start to hear Pride. You know, it's a Kendrick Lamar song. So we're listening to this song in the background. And Doug gets to a convenience store. And when he gets to this convenience store, we start to see a mesh of first person and third person perspective. So we're getting to see it from our view and Doug's view. And it keeps flipping back and forth. While Doug is going to the vault to go get what looks like either Gatorade or Powerade or some kind of knockoff of either or. And as Doug is cashing out, we still are seeing it flip-flop. When we get to see Doug start to present himself to the exit, we are just given that first-person perspective of Doug. We don't get to see our perspective until a little bit later. So as Doug is exiting out of the convenience store, we see cops pull up. They're drawing their guns. We can't actually tell what they're saying to him, or we could read a little bit of words, but other than that, we also see there are two individuals recording the whole incident. We eventually see an ID go up, and as the ID goes up, gunshots are heard. And the next time we see Doug, he's on the ground. We pan to his drink, and then we pan to a wallet, and we find out that it is not Doug on the ground, but Marcus Jennings, and we also find out that it hasn't happened to Doug. This is really Marcus Jennings in Norfolk, Virginia at 2 p.m. And we end up panning back to Doug and going to that third person point of perspective. And we see that Doug is actually coming out of the convenience store, that it is 11 a.m. and he is drinking. So he's drinking his drink, he's prepping himself to go back on that run to finish it off. So we learn basically that as Marcus Jennings is getting shot, Doug is out for a run. And I'm guessing that they put this scene together, or these scenes together, to try to emulate that as easily as it could have happened to Marcus Jennings, then it also could have happened to Doug. So, brief side note, I don't know how I actually feel about the first 2.5 minutes of the show because, side note, Marcus Jennings is not a real person. Okay, I currently live in Hampton Roads, and it is a very notable area in Virginia, and it includes Norfolk, Virginia. Okay, it includes Norfolk, Virginia, Virginia Beach, Newport News, Hampton, a lot of different places, and a few historical black colleges, and we don't have anything anything close to that. I guess the closest thing we could get to that is a Donovan Lynch. That happened in March, so I'm guessing that this was something that was aired or started to be filmed in March. March 26th, we had Donovan Lynch, who was killed by the police. His family is currently suing the city of Norfolk. Well, no, they're suing the city of Virginia Beach for $50 million. Okay, Donovan Lynch is a little bit well known because he is the cousin of Pharrell. So nobody knows how that case is going to turn out. It's currently being investigated by the state police. And there are a lot of anomalies in the case because it is said that Donovan Lynch's body was moved, that he was shot at least twice, and when exactly did he die and when exactly he received medical attention is still up for debate. So that's the closest case that I know of that would be the Marcus Jennings. Okay? But I still don't know how I feel about it. So I'm going to continue with the episode. And once we move away from Doug, we go again to Doug. He's already back at the dorms. He's playing video games, I guess, in the common area. And we see Kiki, or Kiela, or Luca's sister, whatever you want to call her. And we see her, and she's coming, and she's like, "Are you really posting this ridiculousness? Do you not know what's going on?" And Doug is trying to explain himself. He's like, I'm trying to, bring a little happiness. I'm not trying to make everything a downer. I don't really want people living in that detriment or pretending like that detriment is all there is to life. And Kiki is basically everything that Doug says, she denounces it. She says that he's basically not caring. He's basically blowing it off. And the party should, in actuality, be something that he takes the money and donates it to a cause towards Marcus Jennings. And, I kind of had to side-eye this for a little bit because I'm like, okay, he already told you that hashtagging is not going to work. He's already telling you that the previous things that have been done for black lives that have been lost by police brutality, none of those strategies have actually worked. So why would he continue? And now you also got to know that as this is being shot, it must be encouraged that the George Floyd situation, how it ended up with Chauvin, Derek Chauvin being sent to jail and everything like that, they don't know about this current. That for them, we're still living in that madness. Okay, we're still living in that madness, so they don't know that there has been a little bit of change. So you have to take that into account when you're looking at the situation and you're looking at Doug and you're like, Doug has a point that nothing that has been currently done has changed or moved the needle for black people. Next we see Vivek, Nomi, and Jazz pre-gaming because they're getting ready to go to Doug's party. And there's a lot of interesting conversation there, whether it be Nomi to Jazz about does she feel uncomfortable about going to her ex's party, whether it be Vivek talking about not having a dad, or whether it just be Nomi coming at Vivek about, well, Luna doesn't have a dad, and you don't see her babying her drinks and all that kind of stuff. And then Jazz coming back at Nomi by saying, Luna's really going to be messed up when she gets older. And then, about maybe 20 seconds later, we see Javi and Anna, and apparently Javi has given Anna a watch that has her initials on the back, and she's super happy. She's showing it off. And the end of that scene really is just Vivek and Javi winking, and Anna showing that she has a little curiosity. We straight after that scene move into Doug's party. Doug's party is a lot of this episode. Okay? Doug's party begins, or we're shown Aaron basically gloating about an air freshener to Doug. And how Doug is basically saying, hey, this party may be a great hustle because $20 a head, there's already so many people here. I didn't have to spend much and everything like that. And then Aaron kind of like, well, I didn't pay anything because I'm broke, And Zoe's like seconding not paying anything. And Doug is just looking at them both dumbfoundedly while they're saying, yeah, Zoe says about Kiki not making them pay because, if they sign a petition that is going on about Marcus Jennings, then they didn't have to pay the $20 to get in, which leads Doug to be like, hold up, I'm going to basically go talk to Kiki. And Aaron follows. He wants to be Mr. Peacemaker. Doug comes to Kiki and is like, what are you doing? And Kiki tells Doug that, it's her brother's loft, her father pays for it, and she doesn't have to ask him anything. And Luca seconds that. He was like, Doug, you want to chill for a bit. You want to chill. And he didn't think it was a big problem. The funniest thing about the whole thing is this is supposed to be Luca and Doug's party. Yet Luca didn't talk to Doug about it. And Doug questions that like, yo, bro, you didn't talk to me about it. And Aaron seconds that and is like, that's kind of shady, bro. That you didn't talk to Doug about you were changing up people having to pay. So he's thinking about that he's making money, and in actuality, he's making nothing, So that conversation escalates. It escalates because they want to discuss what it is to be a bad black person. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole scene of being a bad black person. It is very trivial, and there's a lot of degrees for me of things that are not necessarily true. One of the biggest scenes that comes to mind for me is Zoe mentioning in this conversation about being a bad black person that she's questioned by Jazz that she always hashtags, and she never does anything other than that. And Zoe explains all of that by saying, well, I have a black father, I have black brothers, and I've been marching for this since high school and stuff like that, and I was planning to. She really did like entice that she was planning to, and I'm like, okay, so when were you planning to do this? Like, when was the actual march, or when was the actual, putting together, planning something for the Marcus Jennings? Because people can say that easily. That was one of the great conversations there, and it was also another dialogue about whether Doug just ignores the situation. How he doesn't want to ever talk about the situation with Aaron or with Zoe or with Luca or even with Kiki. He doesn't want to absorb and continue dialogue about police brutality. Um, that basically sums up this whole thing. I mean, you get Anna and Vivek, they're both at the bar while all this dialogue about being a bad black person is happening. They're at the bar, and she asks Vivek why the wink, and Vivek was like, well, Javi asked me to help him, and I did, and that's how your watch came about. And Anna's not happy about it. I mean, she keeps questioning Javi about the watch, and Javi was like, is there really a problem? Is there really a problem that, that Vivek helped So at the same time, the conversation is continuing with all these people. Nomi is asking who is a good black person. They answer Will Smith, and you get Aaron coming with a conversation of or dialogue of, black people have to take things because in all the 400 years, black people have never been given anything. And Doug comes back with the comment of, it doesn't matter your wealth, it doesn't matter your prestige. As long as you're black, you're still going to have that treatment. You're still going to have it because systematically, white people feel as though that black people are inferior. Even though that they might not say it, they feel it. And he questions Nomi because of the fact that Aaron gives her the pass as being like, I'm talking about white people who are inherently bad, but it's not you. Okay? And she was basically like, okay. And then Jazz gives her a pass and was like, white people are not sitting back thinking who's a bad white person and who's a good white person. And Nomi just basically says, yeah, that's true. And Doug just basically comes with her like, yo, why would you? Why would you? You don't never have to deal with any kind of oppression. Which was kind of off a little bit because she is a woman. She does have to deal with some kind of oppression. And on top of that, she is LGBT. So she does deal with some type of oppression. It just is not the same as yours. We now move on to Lavik and Anna and Nomi. They're all at home, and Lavik is just chilling. He's just like, things, you should think, Javi. It wasn't that big of a deal. He just wanted to impress you. He didn't want to let you down, which we see Anna is just like, you're right. Let me go think, Javi. So I'll move a little bit forward here because everything in the middle doesn't really matter. But there's one more scene with Doug that is pivotal. When he finally discusses with Kiki that he does care. And how it comes about is that they're all sitting in the common area and they look onto the TV, and on the TV it says that a young man has been slain. And I guess looks like he's kind of under the age of 18. And it hits Doug. And we see everyone in the common area kind of frozen in that time. And then we see Doug go to Kiki's room and discuss with her his feelings. That when he sees these instances of whether it be a black woman or a black man, he thinks that there's never a right place and never a right time. And, how easily that he could be those people. And it makes him upset. So he pushes it away because he doesn't want to be in that sorrow. He doesn't want to be in that detriment. The final scene is Doug being with Aaron saying, we have to do something. We have to make an impact. Of course, this is a 2-episoder. So we won't know what the impact will be until next week. But I want to discuss a few things. Okay? I want to discuss a few things. And I know that this review is not the average review that I would give. It's not as detailed and stuff because I need to discuss a few things. One of these things is I want to give you a short story of when I was in college. Okay? So I went to college. Like I said before, I went to a historical black college first. And when I went, it was actually the experience gained me a lot of insight into things that I would have never ordinarily thought that I would have insight into, because my first year being on campus, I seen a man get murdered in front of my face. Okay? It was over a girl. And we all kind of knew about it because if you hung at the barber shop or you knew the girl, you knew that she was basically playing between two men, and one of them ended up dead because of the other one's hand over a threat and basically over the girl. I wish sometimes that when we watch Grownish, that they actually talked about things that are important to discuss. My first year of college, not only did I see someone get murdered in front of my eyes, there were a lot of people who committed suicide. Okay, some people that I was friends with, you just couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't handle the things, and these weren't people that just went off and jumped off a bridge or, you know, shot themselves. One girl actually drank bleach and hung herself on the back of the door to her room, and her roommate found her. Um, Another guy ended up basically cutting his wrist, I think, and those stories are never really discussed. I mean, I remember how many times that we had to go and have little common spaces and grieve together because there was just so much happening on campus. We had the some of us killing ourselves. We had some of us being killed. And it's always hard to be on campus, especially with so many colleges that are interweaved into cities. You still get the crime. Um, a teacher of mine who had a son who was going to a neighboring college ended up dead just by opening his front door. Someone knocked on the front door, he opened it, living on college campus, and shot and killed. No one knows who did it, and it's still a mystery to this day. This is what college is like sometimes. There's good and there's bad, but there's always a lot of good. Seeing the frats and the sororities, their parties, they're watching them step, going to the football games. Yeah, that was probably one of my favorites. Going to football games, going to the basketball games, watching the band practice. There's so much there, but a lot of it is not discussed. We get to see so many images and so many perspectives about these people having their life. Not to say that there isn't pregnancy that happens in college. Not to say that there isn't people who fell out of college. All those instances happen, and I've seen all those instances happen. I've seen people who go to college and just never be happy there because it wasn't the college of their first choice. I was one of those people. That HBCU was not the college of my first choice. It wasn't the college of my second choice. It actually wasn't a college on my top 20 or 30 or 40. But it was an experience. I don't regret it. And I wish that some of these scenes that we see, they take, or some of these storylines that we see, they take a very urban angle, but I feel like we don't always invest into things that actually happen when you're on college that should be discussed, like mental illness, suicides, like being on a campus that has crime, people getting robbed, people getting raped, people being murdered. That all happens. You're basically in a city. You're in a city that's in a city because a college campus is basically a small city, and most of the time they're inside a city. And when you have multiple colleges inside a city with their own little cities within them, everyone feels safe or wants to feel safe on college campus, but you can't always 100% prove that you're going to be safe. So this episode has been hard to review because it touches on a lot of things that really need to be discussed way more in depth. I unfortunately do not use this platform for that. I do podcasts about things like this. So I'm not going to try to change opinions or anything like that, but I am going to give everyone something to think about on a discussion of being a bad black person. Okay? For me, I don't believe in it. I believe that there are black people who deal in detriment. And when I'm saying black detriment, I mean there are black people who peddle things that white people usually say but can't say because they need someone who's black to verify those things or give validity to it. So when you look at someone like Kanye or a Candace Owens, who always bring up things that are controversial and detrimental to people who look like them, it's crazy. But I wouldn't call them bad black people. I would just say that they like to peddle in detriment, and for them it is for getting white praise. So for them, getting white praise equates to making $1. So looking a little bit closer at what Kiki is saying, that you have to be invested in your community, then you're somehow turning your back on your people as an avoidance or as someone who is just not trying to be in that detriment. So for me, when I look at that scene, those scenes put together with Kiki, it took me back to how there are black people who have similar goals and they have different ways of reaching those goals. And it's what's positive about being a person in general, because we're all perfectly flawed, and especially when it comes to black people or any people, no one is monolithic, meaning no one acts and does things the same exact way. We all have a different way of thinking and a different way of execution. And I felt Kiki was very tone deaf, but I also felt that Aaron, Zoe, and Nomi, and Luca just standing there, not giving her adequate pushback, was ridiculous. Because if you go back to Frederick Douglass, you go back to Booker T, okay, you have Booker T, you have W.E. Du Bois, you have William Trotter, you have Ida B. Wells, you have Mary Talbert. They're all trying to progress black people. They're all trying to move black people forward and reach out for that equity and that equality. But they all had different ways of doing it. And it happens every generation. When you go to Martin Luther King, you had Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you had Angela Davis, you had Huey P. Newton, you had Marcus Garvey. They all were trying to reach the same kind of goal, but had different executions. Now, also with that saying, some of us are legislators and some of us are activists. If you're going to be an activist, you're putting that visual symbol to whatever you're trying to persuade people to care more about or to identify with. So when you look at a Trayvon Martin, the first thing we think about is a young man in a hoodie or someone wearing a hoodie. You know, or you look at Eric Gardner, you start to think about I Can't Breathe. When you think about George Floyd, you start to think about him calling out for his mama. You put a symbol to it so people can better correlate that, this has importance. But at the same time, activists sometimes have to live in detriment. They have to be in the struggle. And for someone like Aaron, who constantly portrays himself as an activist, I would have appreciated him giving that pushback. Because not all of us want to be in a detriment. Although I care about a Walter Scott and a George Floyd and a Sandra Bland and a Tamir Rice, and the names go on and on and on. Although I care about that, I don't want to live in that detriment. I don't want that to be how I proceed with my life. Because I have goals for myself. And I understood what Doug was saying about trying to just live life. Find the happiness in life. There's so much that we can dread in life and be unhappy about. And I know these instances of police brutality are they're detrimental, plain and simple. But you don't have to live in those things. So, I want to pose this question. And my pushback would be exactly this. That although it's nice to be a social warrior, it is not made in one cloth. Some of us are in the background pushing work through, trying to find that equality and that equity for black people or Hispanic people or Asian people. And we don't want to forget about the people who are activists, but it's not just a one plan solution. There are multiple things that need to be implemented so black people can prosper and so black people can feel secure in themselves. And it's not just let me throw up a hashtag, and it's not just let me go to the nearest Black Lives March. You have to vote. You have to vote. You have to pressure politicians. And if they're not doing the right thing, you have to vote them out. And give someone else a chance to persuade you that they will do the right thing. And if that's not enough, then you should run for office. Or you should go and find someone to run for office who you would think that would bring better circumstances to the communities that you love. Now, as much as we do all of that, there's also the thought of we need to teach each other to love each other. Whether it's love our differences or love our similarities. Because that conversation of being a bad black person is never a conversation that we should want to have with each other. It should be what would be your execution? And do you see flaws in my execution? Because then we could live and learn. And I agreed with Nomi that there aren't white people who are sitting back thinking, oh, I'm a bad white person. Oh, I'm a good white person. There's good people and there's bad people. And it doesn't matter their skin tone, because bad people can be any skin tone. And just as well as a white person can do something bad to you, a black person can do something bad to you. But we should always live in the foundations that we're given. And we're 2021. It's enough talking about what Martin Luther King has done and what Malcolm X has done. We need our own people to help build a legacy. It's nice for us to look at these people as legends, but they're not really legends. They built a legacy. They built a foundation. Or, if you want to say it, they kept a foundation going. And it's up to us to want to continue that foundation. Not by tearing each other down, but exchanging ideas and building each other up. and respecting that our ideas may not be the same. Our execution may not be the same. Our mental equivalents may not be the same. But the more that we start to use distractors like you're not being a good black person, we're already losing the battle. There's enough struggles out there without making that division between black people. You're doing the work of what your oppressors want you to do. They want you to have that division. Because divided we fall, and united we stand. But I'm not going to get too deep into this. Like I said, I'm just going to leave you with that and hope that maybe you think about it. You think about what really essentially is a bad black person. Because honestly, like I said, I can't find a definition of what that is. I don't even think that is a discussion that we have with each other. I mean, we might say somebody is crazy, but black people usually are very forgiving. And even to our own. But that, like I said, that conversation is detrimental. It's a bad conversation to have. I wish that wasn't the conversation. And I'm just leaving you with the thought of we're not monolithic. Different executions, different ideas, and we should work that way. We should accept each other for our differences, as well as our similarities. But this has been great. This has been fun. I can't wait for the next episode. I will bring that to you as soon as I can. If you have something that you would like me to review, cool. Feel free to comment. I'll try to check it as soon as I can. But other than that, I hope that you continue to have a good weekend. And on top of that, remember, I am also very supportive of other creators. So I am also putting another creator on the end, same one as usual. Feel free to check out her videos, give her suggestions of what you would want to see. She has a Patreon and an Instagram and a Twitter and loves the conversation. So I'm done, and like I said, I'm Pharaoh Moses. This has been an edition of Analytical Perspective, and you have a great weekend.